Welcome. I come to you from Washington, D.C., where a number of rabbis who are part of the Truah organization, rabbis and cantors, have gathered. The conference that starts later on today to talk about some of the challenging parts of what it is to live in the United States, what it is to be a Jew, what it is to be a Zionist who is currently unhappy with how Israel is running its business. All those things together will be discussed in the next few days. And on Wednesday, we'll be demonstrating at ICE headquarters. I think talking about ICE, it's pretty cold out here, certainly for Israeli California boy. Reminiscent of my days in Stockholm, somebody said to me yesterday, "How is it that you have such a extremely professional coat?" From a cold point of view, I lived in Stockholm, I got street cred. Okay, we're in the second. Hopefully, we'll finish today the part about Judith. I'll remind everyone, or if you weren't here last time, you will hear for the first time that we're not doing the entire book of Judith. That would take quite a while. Lots of it is about other parts of the story. We're concentrating on the parts of the book of Judith that actually deal with the character Judith, her name being very Jewish, very Jewishy, very Jewy name, compared to, say, for instance, Esther, whose name is a very pagan name, Astarte or Ashtoreth. And we'll continue our comparison not only with Esther, but with other biblical references, nods to biblical texts. We're not going that deep in order to actually see quotes. We could do that. We could have done that. We could have looked at the Greek of the Judith text we have and compared it to the things that feel like the same idea, the same character, the same words in Esther, and then looked at the Greek translation there. And if the words were identical or similar, and especially if they're rare words, then of course we could say there's an intentional reference. So whether the references are intentional or whether they're in our imagination, they are still references that are worth looking at, because the purpose of this course, more than anything else, aside from acquainting ourselves with another bit of Jewish literature, which isn't all that much studied in Jewish circles, aside from talking about strong women characters, it's to see how the author, late second, early first century of the Common Era, is presenting to us an alternative perfect woman, perfect Jewish woman, as opposed to, say, Esther, or maybe the same as, or opposed to Susanna. And that's what we looked at when we looked at the story of Susanna and at the additions of the Septuagint's additions to the book of Esther as well. Okay, before we begin at chapter 10, did anybody have any business from last week they wanted to take up when we're unable to do so? Okay, then. So let's see, Chuck, you want to read from us the first paragraph in chapter 10, please?
I would be honored. When Judith had stopped crying out to the God of Israel and had ended all these words, she rose from where she lay prostrate. She called her maid and went down into the house where she lived on Sabbaths and on her festival days. She removed the sackcloth she had been wearing, took off her widow's garments, bathed her body with water, and anointed herself with precious ointment. She combed her hair, put on a tiara, and dressed herself in the festive attire that she used to wear while her husband Manasseh was living. She put sandals on her feet and put on her anklets, bracelets, rings, earrings, and all her other jewelry. Thus she made herself very beautiful to entice the eyes of all the men who might see her. She gave her maid a skin of wine and a flask of oil, and filled a bag with roasted grain, dried fig cakes, and fine bread. And then she wrapped up all her dishes and gave them to her to carry.
All right. So, rather expansive description here. What are the things to come to mind from before we get to the from building the plot of the story, the character, but what are things that come to mind from a biblical point of view? People may be caught. Okay. The sackcloth. Yes, Ria.
So this is probably not what you meant by the question, but Manasseh, uh, is this the original Manasseh?
No. This is somebody from, his name is Menashe, but he's
Yeah.
actually not from the tribe of Menashe. As we learned last week, he's from the tribe of Shimon. So
Oh,
last week when we saw that whole long, she and he are from the same tribe of Shimon, and that's in order for us to remember what Simon did at the rape of Dinah, that he was zealous and he struck out and he took revenge.
oh,
And so that's in
yeah.
order to plant the seed in our mind also. Oh, here too, there may be some violence and some revenge in store for us. That's like that's a little bit of foreshadowing. But what I would say about this is that why is it relevant? She had been mourning for her husband all these years. This is not a biblical reference. This is a internal reference in the book of Judith. She had been mourning for whatever it was, how many years and months it was, and suddenly she gets dressed up. So you have to imagine the whole village, the whole town. They see that after this woman's been wearing sackcloth all these years, and or dressed in widow's garb, and then sackcloth here because of the situation that they're being threatened. Suddenly she is putting on her finest, which she hadn't done since her husband was alive. So that's bound to get people to notice. It also has us noticing that, well, what does one do when one's husband is alive as opposed to when husband is dead? One of the things in the very male-centric world is a woman will get dressed up, put on her perfume, put on her best, in order to begin a kind of in-house seduction. I think that's in the background here. Yeah. Yes, Megan.
It's, I don't know if this is real, but since I know the story, or I remember the story, it reminds me of Tamar, because I have this feeling that she's planning something, with all this decorative, enticing.
Right. So whereas Tamar gets dressed up, she takes off her widow's garb and dresses up as a prostitute. So there's the dress. So not that she's dressing up as a prostitute, but the dressing up, that is a sign that something's about to happen. Right. And it also puts her in a liminal state. She's not in the state she was before, and she's going into what we don't know yet why she's getting dressed up, because we don't know yet what she's going to do. None of us have yet seen all those wonderful paintings, of Judith with Holofernes's. I won't say, I don't want to spoil this. No spoilers here, but none of us have seen that before. None of us have read the story. So we just know she's getting dressed up to do something. This is interesting. And why would she get dressed up now of all times and everybody else is wearing sackcloth? She's similar here to Esther and Mordecai when after the decree against the Jews by Haman, that Haman will kill the Jews, then they put on sackcloth. And at some point, Esther says to Mordecai, take off the sackcloth, dress normally. This is not the right time for sackcloth. This is the time to blend in and do what you need to do. Okay, how about jewelry? Anybody remember anybody with jewelry?
The women.
Yes, but any particular woman where jewelry is emphasized?
Well, I was just thinking of the golden calf and what the women did versus the men.
Okay. So maybe yes, that they actually did not contribute their jewelry and they saved their jewelry to make the the mirrors that were in the temple itself, according to the Agadah. But there is one woman to which jewelry is a detailed description, and that's Rebecca. Rebecca, who, when she's being courted by Abraham's servant, she's given a ton of jewelry. Jewelry features there as well. In other words, it's a precursor to something, to man and woman coming together. Okay. And also in Proverbs, the end of Proverbs, Eshet Chayil also has a woman dressed up in jewelry. I don't think that's so much of a reference, because in ancient times women would wear jewelry. And there's that exception that the Tobit just brought up, in that sometimes the jewelry is used not for negative things, but for positive things. Okay. So then what, anything else before we go on? Okay, Chuck, why don't you read another paragraph, 6, please?
6. Get the right sheet. Then she went out to the town gate of Betulia and found Uzziah standing there with the elders of the town Shabris and Charmis. When they saw her transformed in appearance and dressed differently, they were very greatly astounded at her beauty and said to her, "May the God of our ancestors grant you favor and fulfill your plans, so that the people of Israel may glory and Jerusalem be exalted." She bowed down to God.
What is she being praised for her here?
Beauty.
Beauty, and not, for instance, her bravery, her courage, her piety. We've seen how pious she is beforehand, but it's her beauty that catches the eye of the men, even her own men, her own guys, the leaders of her own community. But it's as if we had read this straight right after last week, where maybe there was a doubt in their minds whether she could really pull this off or not, suddenly they're convinced. But they're not convinced from an intellectual point of view. Right? They're not convinced by admiring her courage in another situation. They're convinced by the fact that she's pretty. So we ask ourselves also, whether it's male to male, male to female, female to male, female to female, how often do we judge people and their virtue by how attractive they are? Yes, Taiba.
All the research, though with one recent exception, about how the taller presidential candidate male wins in the United States. It's the same principle. Principle's not the right word, same phenomenon.
Phenomena, yeah. Exactly. Anybody else? Yes, if this was today, they would have added she was also tall. Okay. Another element that's crept up here is, she lives in Betulia, right? She lives, and we have that confusion about the fact that this is ahistorical. Nebuchadnezzar was not the king of Assyria; he was a Babylonian at different periods, different times, and so this is not historical. And she's part of the northern kingdom, even though Shimon and the tribe of Shimon got lost, but still she's situated in the northern kingdom, as, by the way, is in Tobit as well, the book of Tobit. These are ahistorical, but what name comes up here? Jerusalem. We're going to see that Jerusalem comes up quite a bit just in the point to come. In other words, there is a comment to be made about the centrality of Jerusalem, even though this feels not like a typical Jerusalem-centric book story, but Jerusalem is still there in the background. Okay. All right. Yes, go ahead.
I don't know why this just occurred to me, but with what's going on, speaking of ahistorical, with a certain cohort, I'll say, of Muslims trying to make the case that Jews are not indigenous to the Middle East, when the Quran rewrote parts of the Bible, Was this book included?
I don't think so, not that I remember, but I want to maybe differ that the Quran rewriting the Bible. It's the Quran takes traditions that are also biblical traditions, and we don't know if they, even though as late as it is, 8th century, 7th, 8th century, we don't know if it was if the writers of the Quran, or the writer, if you're Muslim, the writer of the Quran was utilizing. That's certainly not the belief of Islam.
Wait, but you don't see the thing that comes to mind, the substitution of Ishmael for Isaac at the mountain, as supersessionism?
Well, one thing that might interest you is that in the Quran itself, it doesn't say Ishmael at the Aqidah. It says the son. Now, true, that is the tradition of his Muslim interpretation. That is a form of supersessionism is a strong word. It has a lot of meanings politically as well. And
yeah, just to say that's why I chose it.
I understand, but every religion has an element of superseding culturally, utilizing materials beforehand, and our Tanakh is no different. The fact that the wisdom literature we have, the book of Proverbs in particular, is much of it is based on earlier Egyptian and other ancient Near Eastern documents, is a form of superstition as well, once it's being put in the mouth of Solomon or in the mouth of our Hebrew Bible. But back to this particular issue, I don't think, in answer to your question, I don't think so. I don't remember Judith being one of the heroes. There's a long list of what are called in the Muslim tradition the stories of the prophets. Some of them are in the Quran, many of them are not in the Quran. Sometimes what's in the Quran that reflects, that has parallels in Hebrew biblical texts, is not the same. There's a confusion, for instance, between the Eglah Arufah, the breaking the neck of a calf law when somebody is found in the middle of nowhere who's been murdered, and the red heifer law. There seems to be a confusion of it. It's hard to say that the Tanakh was right there and then the Quran was rewriting what was in the Tanakh. That's a little bit, I think that's oversimplification, although it's not my expertise at all. I think there were things that were known that were out there, as far as certain tendencies amongst Muslims to say that the Israelite people had no place, were never part of. Well, our own tradition has us stealing the land from another people, taking the land from another people, Canaanites. I think I just want to be careful that before we go and make accusations, is a hard word to use. That's not the right word, but assumptions about how traditions have shifted, that we too have done the exact same thing. We've taken folk tales from other traditions and made them our own as well. We find that in the Talmud, both material from the land of Israel and from Babylonian Midrashim. In Tobit, the group of us some of us are doing Tobit on Thursdays. In Tobit, there's Asmodeus. Asmodeus is a Persian demon who found his way into our Jewish literature and becomes quite a major character, demonic character in Talmudic and Midrashic literature. And it's not originally from our. In other words, we borrow all the time. All of us borrow all the time. But the answer, again, to your original question is, as far as I remember, there's nothing in the Quranic tradition about Judith. Okay, there's more. Yeah, there's yes. Enough said. All right. Anything else on this section? Okay. So, Tybal, maybe if you could read 9 for us.
Let me get there. Hold on. Then she said to them, "Order the gate of the town to be open for me, so that I may go out and accomplish the things you have just said to me." So they ordered the young men to open the gate for her as she requested. When they had done this, Judith went out, accompanied by her maid. The men of the town watched her until she had gone down the mountain and passed through the valley, where they lost sight of her.
Okay. No, innocent reading, hearing this for the first time. What are folks imagining right now, what was just described?
That they've made her the shlichah to do something for them.
So that's nice. That's a noble way of looking at it. Ria, can you imagine another way?
Oh my goodness, when your teenage daughter walks out the door dressed like a whore. Oh, and that's what this is. She's enticing. She is doing something purposefully to have people notice her and maybe proposition her. I don't, because I don't know what, I didn't read ahead. So,
Hmm. Okay, so first of all, she's
yeah.
not dressed like a, let's be specific. She's not dressed like a whore here,
No, no, no,
unlike
but
Tamar.
she, but no, but I mean not the uniform,
And
but
neither were our daughters. Let's set the right. They were dressing according to the look at yeah, I
yeah,
remember I was just reminiscing with somebody the other day, walking down Ben Yehuda Street, I would be walking with Sasha. Sasha had her head covered. I had no kippah, even though I was a rabbi at the time, but as a statement in Jerusalem, I didn't want a kippah. And the three girls, the three teenagers at the time are very wearing, they're very beautiful women, and and I can see these guys walking up, just checking up and down our daughters. And I want to say, like, hello, I'm right here. You can't see I'm the father. I'm right here. Of course, I didn't say anything. I think that the truth lies in between. Yes, while she is doing their shlichut, that she is their emissary, it feels like the narrator is saying, and they watched her walk away the whole until they could. There's like craning out, so you can't until they can't see her anymore, looking over the horizon. It feels like that a little bit because there's such an emphasis placed here on her beauty, her physical beauty. Um, but she's not alone, is she? It's pertinent that she's accompanied by her maid. And we'll see that multiple times. She's not alone. So she's there walking. Yes, I think the text wants us to say, and uh, people's heads were turning. Yeah, the men's heads were turning. Yeah, she was turning heads the whole way.
Rabbi,
Yes.
don't you think there's something interesting in that one assumes she was physically able or her maid to open the gate, but they ordered the young men to do it, that's when I thought about why was I thinking emissary, that's part of the emissary.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also the fact that she's charismatic. People want to please her, right? Whether it's her own people, as we will see, even the enemy, people want to please her because she is so beautiful. It almost feels like ironic feminist writing here, right? Look at these doozies, right? Look at these idiots. But I think it's just I think it's evidence of a high degree of consciousness as to how femininity and beauty work amongst men in a men world. But yeah, everybody's jumping to do her will, like opening up the gate. Exactly. Okay. Eileen, how about reading for us 11?
As the women were going straight on through the valley, an Assyrian patrol met her and took her into custody. They asked her, "To what people do you belong, and where are you coming from, and where are you going?" She replied, "I am a daughter of the Hebrews, but I am fleeing from them, for they are about to be handed over to you to be devoured. I am on my way to see Holofernes, the commander of your army, and to give him a true report. I will show him a way by which he can go and capture all the hill country without losing one of his men, captured or slain." When the men heard her,
So let's take a break here. Associations, anyone? Who else is asked in the Hebrew Bible, to what people do you belong and where are you coming from? Or what is your job? Jonah in the ship.
Yeah, that's my name. That's what I was about to answer.
Okay, so remember, so why don't you tell us frame that scene for us, if you would.
Well, the thing that of course speaks to me first is Jonah is told to be a prophet and he doesn't want to because he thinks no one will listen to him. So he flees And isn't that the point right where he gets to the ship?
Yeah, yeah.
And he wants to take, and part of his fleeing, and the idea that God's not going to find him on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's a little hard to prophesy to people if you're nowhere near them. Anyway, so he's at the ship and he wants to be taken on the ship.
Right. So she's proving she's doing exactly the opposite of Jonah. And she's going down, also down into, into the valley to be caught. But she proudly says, I am a Hebrew, in the same way that Jonah says, I'm a Hebrew. But so the irony is not in her answer to them. The irony is in that the author wants us, I think, definitely wants us to think of Jonah here. Okay, and then how about she's going to show him a way to do battle with her people so that nobody gets hurt. Also, I guess this would be a form of foreshadowing. But since Ria, you haven't read ahead, we won't tell you what it's foreshadowing. But we will ask you to read the next section.
Okay. When the men heard her words and observed her face, she was in their eyes marvelously beautiful. They said to her, "You've saved your life by hurrying down to see our Lord. Go at once to his tent. Some of us will escort you and hand you over to him. When you stand before him, have no fear in your heart, but tell him what you have just said, and he will treat you well." Uh, they chose from their numbers 100 men to accompany her and her maid, and they brought them to the tent of Holofernes. There was a great excitement in the whole camp, for her arrival was reported from tent to tent. They came and gathered around her as she stood outside the tent of Holofernes, waiting until they told him about her. They marveled at her beauty and admired the Israelites, judging them by her. They said to one another, "Who can despise these people who have women like this among them? It is not wise to leave one of their men alive, for if we let them go, they will be able to beguile the whole world."
Okay,
Then,
we'll take a break. Hold on, we'll take a break. I know it's exciting, but what's coming up here? The issue, the physicality, the objectification of the influence that she's having just because of her beauty, how she holds herself, how she's walking, this whole thing. It's just so surprising from a story point of view. It's not what we expect to happen, although there may be parallels in other cultures, probably are, but I'm not familiar with them. There's another woman who is also presumably attractive, sexually attractive, who also succeeds in through lying to mislead the enemy. Anybody remember? Rahav, the prostitute in the wall in Jericho. Right? So it's a little bit different situation because she's supposed to be a Jerichoite. But she sides with God's people. And so she too, her beauty, she's able to lie. I think the idea is that when you're not paying attention, when the interrogator is paying attention to the beauty of the interrogee, they're not going to catch the lies as easy, perhaps. Maybe that's part of it. Okay, before we go on, any comments or questions? Okay, then James, you want to do 20 for us? Just need you to unmute first.
Then the guards of hopefulness and all his attendants came out and led her into the tent. Holofernes was resting on his bed under a canopy that was woven with purple, gold, emeralds, and other precious stones. When they told him of her, he came to the front of the tent with silver lamps carried before him. When Judith came into the presence of Holofernes and his attendants, they all marveled at her beauty of her face. She prostrated herself and did obeisances to him, but his slaves raised her up. Then Hophanes said to her, "Take courage, woman, and do not be afraid in your heart, for I have never hurt anyone who chooses to serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of all the earth. Even now, if your people who live in the hill country had not slighted me, I would never have lifted my spear against them. They have brought on this on themselves. But now tell me, why have you fled from them and have come over to us? In any event, you have come to safety. Take courage. You will live tonight and ever after. No one will hurt you. Rather, all will treat you well, as they do the servants of my Lord, King Nebuchadnezzar."
Okay, let's take a break here. So at the end of the last paragraph, you notice how it says they all marveled at the beauty of her face, as opposed to
Her body or her totality.
yeah, the shapeliness of her body. But I think perhaps that might be the narrator's way of emphasizing her modesty, her tzniut. Only her face was showing. The rest of the way she dressed was a modest way of dressing. Not sure about it, but that struck me perhaps. Why emphasize her face? But of course, they're watching the whole package. Excuse me for using that word, but they're watching the whole deal. It's like, it's what men often do, or women do as well, perhaps. Yes, go ahead.
Do you think there could be other reasons for face, as in nonverbal communication is often done with the eyes and facial expressions?
Yeah,
Or
yes.
the hint of even Moshe not being able to see God's face, or is that too far?
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought that up, I think, last week or the week before as well. I think it was you who mentioned that. Is there a mention about something of her face? I would say not that Moshe can't see God's face, but the same way I answered last week or whenever it was the week before, is that people could not look at Moses' face because it reflected a godliness. And so therefore he had to put the beehive suit on, that thing over his face. I think that yes, maybe it's not just the beauty of her face. Let's use the word charisma, right? Charisma meaning from the original meaning that it's charm of the god. It's this attraction of the gods, a godly attraction. Yeah, I think that's part of it. So, and it could be both that and emphasizing her tzniut, her modesty. Okay, and this idea that she finally gets to see him and he says, "Don't worry, nobody can hurt you." To me, this is also feels like not the same words, but reminiscent of Esther and Achashverosh, and she goes in and she risks her life and he sticks out his sharvit, or some people say perhaps he stuck out something else, and she touches it, and then what do you need? Whatever you need until Chatzi HaMalchut, up until half of the kingdom is yours, assuring her that, oh, you're my best friend now, best buddy. Okay. Anything else before we go on?
I know you likened it to Esther, but even though we see Abraham acting and not Sarah, but Sarah's beauty when she was in Egypt, and the whole Abraham, oh, she's my sister, that whole thing.
Right.
That
So
apparently too?
yeah, I think so. In that there is this idea that the matriarchs were, so beauty goes along with chosenness. I think so. In that not only Sarah, but also the same thing happened with Yitzchak and Rivka, as you might remember. The Midrash Tanchuma, blows this up even more in the story of Sarah. It says that Abraham put her inside of a chest. There were, a chest on the camel or on the donkey or something, and the guards at the gates of Egypt said, "What do you have in that chest?" And he said, "I have food. I have beans in the chest." And because it's a play on words, because he was Fulei Mitzrayim, or Pulei Mitzrayim, he was at the gates of Egypt, and so he said, "I had food." They made him, the custom agents made him open it up, and then he had to kind of explain himself in a different way. But this hiding. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Which is very sexist as well, of course, right? Sexist to think that the women, the beautiful women, are the ones who are smiled upon by God more than others. Yes, Ria.
So regarding this is foreshadowing. He is going to assure her of her safety,
Yes.
little knowing. And if I'm sure a lot of us have seen the art piece of the artwork, the painting of Judith holding Holofernes's head with all the blood dripping,
Don't tell
and
anyone.
oh my goodness. And so these are literary methods, and it's
Yeah,
wonderful. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I think there's foreshadowing and there is what's the opposite of foreshadowing? Not repetition. What is it called? What's the opposite of foreshadowing as a literary device? Help me out, folks. What am I thinking of? Anyway,
Back references when
yeah.
you
So for me,
yeah.
the back references are to the rest of biblical literature here. That this is part of the storytelling, the art of storytelling here. Um, okay, so Dan, why don't you read for us a little bit here?
From verse 5.
Correct.
Judith answered him, accept the words of your slave, and let your servant speak in your presence. I will say nothing false to my lord this night. If you follow the words of your servant, God will accomplish something through you, and my lord will not fail to achieve his purposes. By the life of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the whole earth, and by the power of him who has sent you to direct every living being. Not only do humans serve him because of you, but also the animals of the field and the cattle and the birds of the air will live because of your power under Nebuchadnezzar and all his house. For we have heard of your wisdom and skill, and it is reported throughout the whole world that you alone are the best in the whole kingdom, the most informed and most astounding in military strategy. Now,
So hold on, well, just take a break
Okay.
and continue. It's kind of like flattery will get you everywhere, right? And any reminiscent here? Any biblical references that people can smell or hear here? Solomon. Solomon being wise, the wisest of all men who have ever lived, also had a special relationship with the animals. All right, so it's very Solomonic here. So flattery, I mean, it's the epitome. And of course, she's not praising him on his military prowess. She's praising him as a gentleman, as an intellectual. All right, go ahead, Dan.
Now, as for Achior's speech in your council, we have heard his words, for the people of Bethulia spared him, and he told them all he had said to you. Therefore, Lord and Master, do not disregard what he said, but keep it in your mind, for it is true. Indeed, our people cannot be punished, nor can the sword prevail against them unless they sin against their God.
Continue.
But now, in order that my Lord may not be defeated and his purpose frustrated, death will fall upon them. For a sin has overtaken them by which they are about to provoke their God to anger when they do what is wrong. Since their food supply is exhausted and their water has almost given out, they have planned to kill their livestock and are determined to use all that God, by his laws, has forbidden them to eat. They have decided to consume the first fruits of the grain and the tithes of the wine and oil, which they had consecrated and set aside for the priests who minister in the presence of our God in Jerusalem, things that is not lawful for any of the people even to touch with their hands. Since even the people in Jerusalem have been doing this, they have sent messengers there in order to bring back permission from the council of the elders. When the response reaches them and they act upon it, on that very day, they will be handed over you to be destroyed.
Okay, this is a way that we can tell this story was meant for a knowledgeable Jewish readership here. You've got to know something about Torah. This is not a simple folk tale. There's too many details here that are connected with halacha. So for instance, well, from a narrative point of view, she's buying time, she's stalling, and she's doing it in a very plausible way. Oh, you're the smartest guy ever, but you should know that he's right. Any Israelite will not be defeated unless they've gone against God, and God will allow them to be defeated. Oh, so you're thinking to yourself, well, what have they done? Well, they haven't done it yet, but what they're planning on doing is they're getting special permission from Jerusalem. Once again, bringing Jerusalem into the picture here where it didn't need to be. They're getting special permission from Jerusalem to partake of the things they have already sanctified, Kodesh. They've already sanctified for the temple. So for instance, there are different kinds of sanctifications. One of them is the gifts that go to the priests. Any agricultural produce that you have, a certain amount needs to go to the priest and to be eaten by the priests while they are ritually pure. And that once you do that, if you are not them and you touch it, or if you are impure and you touch it, then they can't eat it anymore. Another one of the gifts are the tithes, one of the ma'asrot that would go to the Levites, things that had to be brought to the temple. Another thing of sanctification is if you were in a particularly joyous and you said, I dedicate this cow to Jerusalem, to the temple, then you were no longer allowed to touch that cow, get any benefit out of that cow. That cow then belonged to the priesthood in the temple in Jerusalem. And so she's built a very plausible, explanation as to why they're going to get in trouble with God, and yet it's nothing that he really knows about. So she could say it, and she could say it with great bitachon atzmi, with self
Assurance.
self-assurance, so she can be securely say it. But you've got to know a lot about this in order to get this little chapter here. Yes, go ahead. Question. Go ahead.
Not a question, but I'm wondering, with the wording, at least in the translation, of the first fruits of the grain, is that invoking the 7 species, the Shmos 8:8, which basically is the promise of the land?
So I think it's invoking the practice itself. And the practice, so there are 7 species, of which 2 are grains, the barley and the wheat harvest. They come first, and they too are called first fruits, even though afterwards, especially in Israel today, when people talk about first fruits, they're thinking of the other 5 tree fruits, of the pomegranates, grapes, olives, dates, and figs. But the Omer is part of that, right? The Omer is the offering of the first fruits of these. So I think that's where she's going. She's going to a very, very typical, prominent Jewish thing. By the way, it's part of eating kosher. We just think of kosher as being milk and meat and pork and things like that. But part of eating kosher is not eating the wrong thing. You can't eat from the new grain until the Omer has been brought to the temple. Otherwise, that's called chadash, eating new grain. There's all sorts of things have to do. I think it seems to me it's more in the realm of halakha, what people were doing, and less as far as the promise of the land. It doesn't feel like this is a book about the promise of the land here. Anything else?
I guess what I meant, I didn't promise on the land in that it's a way of bolstering her resolution and confidence to say, you're not going to defeat us.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just don't think that the theme here is about ownership of the land. I think the theme here is closer to Esther in that we're about to be slaughtered by a very powerful king and his general. It's physical danger right now. But it certainly could be. Dan, why don't you continue reading for us?
I just got a puzzlement here. In this, the way she's telling this story, she's saying the people of Brazilian know they're going to be doing something wrong, but they've asked permission to do it, and they're waiting for that permission to be given in order to do it, and they're going to be punished anyway. So
they're not asking God, they're asking the permission from the politicians in Jerusalem to do something that really can't be done. It's almost saying, let's say, the mayor says, oh, you want that piece of land next to you? Okay, you're not really supposed to, you can have it. So what? It's still against the law, right? I think maybe that's not a good analogy, but I think it ropes Jerusalem into the sin, into the the fantasy sin of why she's convincing him that they're all going down because God will be angry with them. So it won't be just with them, it will be with Jerusalem as well. I think that's the point of it.
Okay,
Yes.
so the audience is still Holofernes, and she's building her case. That part of the story isn't directed to anybody else reading.
Correct, right. She's only with Holofernes. She's only with the non-Jews right now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting that it's such a detailed description of sin, but maybe it's addressing something as well in the time when this is being written, is that don't be so flippant about these laws that we still have that concern the temple. The temple is still standing, Second Temple. Susan, did you want to ask something? Okay, so go ahead and read, Dan.
So when I, your slave, learned all this, I fled from them. God has sent me to accomplish with you things that will astonish the whole world wherever people shall hear about them. Your servant is indeed God-fearing and serves the God of heaven night and day. So, my Lord, I will remain with you, but every night your servant will go out into the valley and pray to God. He will tell me when they have committed their sins. Then I will come and tell you, so that you may go out with your whole army, and not one of them will be able to withstand you. Then I will lead you through Judea until you come to Jerusalem. There I will set your throne. You will drive them like sheep that have no shepherd, and no dog will so much as growl at you. For this was told to me to give me foreknowledge. It was announced to me, and I was sent to tell you.
So now she's portraying herself as a prophet. She's actually a prophet. And that's an interesting idea. That would be in general to take a look at women in prophecy and in biblical literature, which is very sparse there, and then this post-biblical literature. But anybody remember a small detail about this, which comes from another story? If Richard was here, he would remember. 2 lines, second line from the bottom. And no dog will so much as growl at you. Anybody remember where that's from?
Yeah, Passover, wasn't that?
Exactly, right? In other words, she's comparing Holofernes' attack against the Israelites, including Jerusalem, sending all this, including Jerusalem. She's comparing it to her people leaving Egypt. It was done. In other words, God is supervising over the whole plan, the whole production. Okay. Let's see. Megan, would you like to read? We're at verse 20.
Mute. Her words pleased Holofernes and all his attendants. They marveled at her wisdom and said, "No other woman from one end of the earth to the other looks so beautiful or speaks so wisely." Then Holofernes said to her, "God has done well to send you ahead of the people, to strengthen our hands and bring destruction on those who have despised my Lord. You are not only beautiful in appearance, but wise in speech. If you do as you have said, your God shall be my God, and you shall live in the palace of King Nebuchadnezzar and be renewed throughout the whole world."
Okay. Any reminiscences here? Go ahead.
The book of Ruth.
Exactly. Almost a word for word, right? Your God is my God.
Yeah.
Okay. But also a little bit reminiscent of the story of it's 2 Kings chapter 5. It's Elisha and Naaman, the general of the Arameans, because he's a general here. He's convinced, because he's cured from his tsarat, from his skin, scaly skin, he's convinced that God is the greatest. And because he's got to go back to his own land and be with his king, he's the king's viceroy, and bow down within the temple, he asks Elisha, the prophet of Adonai, to forgive him for that. And he takes a bunch of earth from the land of Israel, so when he goes back, he can worship on the earth of the land of Israel, the God of Israel. There's a lot of interesting, also connected to Jethro. We just had this last Torah portion. but it's, of course, it's part of the fantasy. She's convinced them, and so, but it's the way the narrator is manipulating in a positive way, making use of all these um, all these features from Hebrew Bible. Anything else here?
Yeah, I noticed okay, first of all, through this entire thing, they kept emphasizing her beauty, and her way beyond most, lit
Right.
way. So this whole thing of her beauty and its power over men, and even it says that, they saw her beauty and then her wisdom. My question, and then her speech of wisdom. Would they have heard the speech of wisdom if she wasn't so beautiful?
Good question. Good question. It feels like the narrator is setting us up for that was her entree. Her entree was her beauty. In order,
Right, and
now
she knew it.
right, and now that she's got their attention,
Right.
I think so. Yeah.
To me,
Yes, go ahead, Megan.
To me, there's such strength in Judith. And she knows she's beautiful. That helps. But she's her wisdom and her I mean, she's really using what she's got. She may not have the weapons and the strength of a man, but she's getting them. I don't know. I like the story.
Well, isn't that really what they're trying to say? The beauty of a woman can handle the strongest man. That's the great weapon that women have over men, is their beauty. I mean, it might sound sexist, but that's the thing. That's like the hook.
No, I don't think it's all beauty. I think
it's not. But that's, I don't know. I still think that's the hook. What reminds me of the whole story, there was an old TV show called The Big Valley with Barbara Stanwyck. And she's like a rancher in California. Her husband dies and she takes over this big ranch and she runs it, really well. And she's a smart woman, but she's also very beautiful. And she knows exactly how to use her beauty. I mean, she is smart, but she knows exactly the power of her beauty. And I think that's the important part. And she plays it to the max.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. I'm sorry. The word I was looking for before was flashback. The flashbacks here are, though not from this story, they're flashbacks to biblical literature, but they're in the consciousness of the people who are listening to this story. That's like one of the main things that, okay. Megan, you want to continue?
Yep. Okay. Then he commanded them to bring her in where his silver dinnerware was kept, and ordered them to set a table for her with some of his own delicacies and some of their own wine to drink. But Judith said, I cannot partake of them, nor it will be an offense.
Or
it will be an offense. But I will have enough with the things I brought with me. Holofernes said to her, if your supply runs out, where can you get more of the same? And none of your people are here with us. Judith replied, as surely as you live, my lord, your servant will not use up the supplies I have with me before the Lord carries out by my hand what he has determined.
Go ahead.
I had an Aunt Judy who is so much like this Judith. Sorry. It's so hard not to put her in here.
Okay.
I don't know how beautiful she was.
I hope her husbands are all right.
They all lived to good old age. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And she ruled.
Yeah. So I love that, this is another instance of foreshadowing, of course, right? Don't worry, I'll have enough food. We're not gonna be playing this game for such a long time. Not as long as you'd like, young man. What's the emphasis here in this paragraph? She won't eat the food.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, yeah, she can't eat the food. She's already been described as being extremely pious. She's very She's bathing herself all the time. We'll see she bathes herself even more. She's very strict with her purity. And part of purity are the laws of what you eat. And maybe that's why the narrator gave that kind of an example as to how they're going to get into trouble. Not because they're going to eat pork, or not because they're going to eat horses and camels, which is like equally unkosher, but something that seems like the realm of maybe the priests could decide that God's will would be this way. But it's a brilliant way that she said to him, but I think it's on purpose. It's in the area of what we eat or what is eaten. Okay, we've got 1:30. I just lost my voice right now. Hold on. We go on just a few more minutes. We won't finish, unfortunately, but so it goes. All right, one more. Go ahead, next paragraph.
Then the attendants of Holofernes brought her into the tent, and she slept until midnight. Toward the morning watch, she got up and sent her message to Holofernes. Let my lord now give orders to allow your servant to go and pray. So Holofernes commanded his guards not to hinder her. She remained in the camp 3 days. She went out each night to the valley of Bethulia and bathed at the spring in the camp. After bathing, she prayed the Lord God of Israel to direct her way for the triumph of his people. Then she returned purified and stayed in the tent until she ate her food toward evening.
She's purified, she's praying, and she's eating her food. And she's making a habit. You need to have 3 days for something to become a habit. And then we come to this model of the 3 and the 4 that some of you have studied with me over the years, know is something that Yair Zakovich, Professor Zakovich, wrote his PhD dissertation on, and finds it not only finds it in narrative prose, but also in the book of Proverbs. We're going to get to that section already this week, I think, in our study in Proverbs. The Degem Shalosh ve'arba, the 3 to 4 model. 3 is something, but 4 is Okay, and so the is about to happen. Now continue, please.
On the 4th day, Holofernes held a banquet for his slaves only and did not invite any of his officers. He said to Bagoas, the eunuch who had charge of his personal affairs, go and persuade the Hebrew women who is in your care to join us and to eat and drink with us. For it would be a disgrace if we let such a woman go without being intimate with her. If we do not seduce her, she will laugh at us.
Oh, so this is a little side story here. First of all, no officers. For the story, we understand no officers because, let the Secret Service, they're taken off the night, whatever. There's no officers, but there's others around here. Now, we have to be careful with the word slaves because often the word slaves, as in Hebrew and Greek, can also mean servants. And not every slave is like toiling out in the fields, being whipped. Sometimes they're just the king's servants. And it sounds from this last part here, first of all, it's very gas ruach. It's very base, right? What we wouldn't take advantage and to have whatever language people want to use here in their minds, we wouldn't go ahead and do that. And otherwise, she'll make fun of us. Why would we? Well, of course, we're going to try to seduce her, right? Let's do one more.
So Bagoas left the presence of Holofernes and approached her and said, let this pretty servant not hesitate to come to my lord, to be honored in his presence, and to enjoy drinking wine with us, and to become today like one of the Assyrian women who served the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. Judith replied, who am I to refuse my lord? Whatever pleases him, I will do at once, and it will be a joy to me until the day of my death. So she proceeded to dress herself in all her woman's finery. Her maid went ahead and spread for her on the ground before Holofernes the lambskins she had received from Bagoas as her daily use in reclining.
Okay, so she's buttered him up, and she's being the most dishonest she's been at this moment till she is. I was a little bit troubled about the lambskins. Unfortunately, I'm traveling now, and I didn't bring books with me, and I wasn't able to check in what's his name, Carrie Moore's commentary. But it seems the lambskins might be symbolic of purity. Maybe, hinting at, again, a kind of foreshadowing. Oh, look, she's even come with her own blankets. All this is kind of hinting at what might happen. And this is the stage, Ria, you're not going to read ahead. No reading ahead, Ria. And this is the stage where we're going to take a break until next week. And we'll finish off Judith, and we'll see if I don't, we'll certainly finish, and we'll begin some of our study of the next topic, which are the women of the book of Tobit.
Cliffhanger.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. See you next week.
Rabbi,
Rabbi,
I just
where
wanted.
are you in DC right now?
Right now, I'm downtown at the Hyatt.